Buddy, it's been a long time since I've done a video. I think the last one I did was actually March 17th, the day that Tom Brady left the Patriots. Obviously, a lot's happened in the world since then, and I just want to start out by hoping all my viewers watching this tonight and who will see this in the days ahead, I hope they and their families are safe and healthy and have remained safe and healthy throughout this pandemic. And I know we're all looking forward to the day we can head to Gillette, head to Fenway, and head to the Garden and watch our teams play at home again. Let's cross our fingers that's sooner rather than later, but I know we all miss it. But thankfully, sports are back. But if you want to be able to do that again, just wear a mask like I am right now. Just wear the mask, people, please. Just the more we do this, the sooner we'll get back to whatever our new normal is. But like I just said, as I'll take this off, sports are back. Opening day in Major League Baseball is tomorrow night. And of course, because it's 2020, it looks like Yankees-Nationals is going to get rained out. But why would that not happen, of course, this year? But sports are back, baseball is back, and joining me tonight from the Hardcore Baseball Podcast in 98.5 The Sports Hub, once again, is Matt McCarthy. Matt, how you doing? Good to talk to you.
Cam, I'm doing well. I hope you're doing safe. Hope everybody else is doing safe. And, dude, listen, I hadn't even been checking the weather tomorrow. That game's going to get rained out. Like, you got to be kidding me, right? This year blows. Everything else about it sucks. I was just looking forward to a baseball game tomorrow night. I guess we have to wait one more day. Damn, that blows.
Yeah, I looked at the forecast in D.C. for tomorrow, and it's an 80% chance of rain at first pitch. So, yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, no, just like everything. It's going great.
That's 2020 for you. But obviously, Matt and I planned to do the show together a couple of days ago, but obviously in baseball, some big news broke today as former Red Sox superstar Mookie Betts inked a 13-year deal with the Los Angeles Dodgers for an obscene amount of money, which frankly I can't even remember off the top of my head. I probably should have wrote down. But, Matt, this is where we'll start tonight. Do you think there's any chance the Red Sox would have given him that deal if they did what he have signed here? Or does this just hammer home what your co-host, Tony Maserati, has been saying for years now, that Mookie didn't want to be here?
So this is where I disagree with Maz a lot. I think if the Red Sox had paid Mookie Betts fair market value, he would have signed here. Now, would signing in Boston have been his first choice? Maybe not. I guess he always seemed kind of lukewarm on the city. But I think the most important thing to understand with Mookie Betts is he was never, ever going to take a cent less than what he would get elsewhere. He was always pursuing, to a deal that would make him the second highest paid player in baseball after Mike Trout, because you could argue that Mookie Betts is the second best player in baseball after Mike Trout, and there's no way that Mookie Betts was going to take less. And here's what it ultimately comes down to, Cam. The Red Sox, in my opinion, at every single turn, lowballed Mookie Betts. You go back to 2017, they offered him like 5 and 100, and that was a low ball offer then. After 2018, they offer him, a year where he won, MVP. After 2018, they offer him 8 and 200. Like, what? That's not, this guy was at that point, essentially 2 years away from making $350 million, and you offer him $150 million less. It ultimately comes down to the Red Sox were always about $100 million off from where Mookie Betts wanted to be and where Mookie Betts deserved to be. And there are reports they offered him like 10 and 300 or something in that ballpark. And ultimately, he gets 12 and 365 because that's what this deal is. Like, I know people are saying in 13 years, he was already getting paid $27 million this year. So, just forget that. They're just adding that on to make it seem like it's more money. But still, it's 12 and 365. The Red Sox never came close to that. The Red Sox really only came up to around $300 million. So they were still roughly $65 million away from where Mookie Betts deserved to be. He was always going to end up with a contract north of $350 million, and the Red Sox were never, ever willing to go there. So I think it's kind of ridiculous to say that Mookie Betts didn't want to be here. The Red Sox never gave him an opportunity to be here. And listen, we can debate whether or not Mookie Betts is worth that type of money, whether anybody is worth that type of money. I'm willing to have that discussion with you, all night. Now, I'm certainly, understanding if people say he's not worth that money. Sure, I get that. I totally get that. But my problem is, Cam, the Red Sox were never in the same ballpark. The Red Sox were never even close. And that I find unacceptable as a Red Sox fan. It's like you're going to let somebody walk simply over money. You're not even going to get close. And then you wait until a year before he's done to trade him for what I think is not really a great return. You could have traded him sooner if you were never going to pay him, and that's my frustration, is that the Red Sox determined a long time ago that they were never going to pay him, they were never going to come close to his asking price, and this is where we stand. Now, it's frustrating as a Red Sox fan to say that money got in the way, but money, yes, did get in the way, because you look at that contract, the Red Sox were never, ever close. So I don't think we even know if Mookie Betts would have signed here, because the Red Sox never even gave him a chance to, because $65 million away, that's a hell of a lot of money, Cam. It is.
It absolutely is, Matt. And, now let me ask you, do you believe the Red Sox deserve criticism for not offering him this kind of contract?
Yeah, I do, and here's why. Because if you wait this long to trade him, if you didn't trade him at the deadline last year when you could have gotten more value, when you could have made a baseball move, it reached the point, Cam, where this became a totally financial decision for the Red Sox, which I have a problem with. Like, that's the advantage that you have. You're the Red Sox. You have financial resources that very few teams in sports have, and yet you wait until a year away and get a guy with a bad back. And Jeter Downs is a good prospect and, a decent catching prospect, I guess. But, if you had traded him a year and a half before he was up, you could have gotten a haul. You could have gotten, 3, 4 really good top prospects if you had traded him before that, because you made the determination that you weren't going to pay him. And that's the problem I have. I guess the way to phrase it, Cam, is I don't have a problem that they didn't pay him. I have a problem that they waited long enough and then got rid of him because they weren't going to pay him. They didn't cash in on him when they could have, even though they knew they weren't going to pay him. You get what I'm saying?
I get exactly what you're saying, man.
Yeah.
Before we move on to this 2020 Red Sox season, I do have to ask you, what were your thoughts on what turned out to be a labor dispute, basically, between Rob Manfred and Tony Clark on the two sides? I think you said on the Sports Hub once that other than golf, that there was no sport that was easier to come back in a socially distanced world than baseball. And they got into a labor war and said to the point where Commissioner Manfred had to impose the schedule on the players to get the season underway tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, it was horrible for the game. And, you think about, unique circumstances, unprecedented circumstances in the world, and you hope that, maybe these sports could be creative and try something new. And I guess we will get a few new things in baseball. We'll get the runner on second base. But, I really wish that a labor dispute had been brewing in baseball for years. I remember Adam Wainwright's comments a few years ago about, there's going to be a strike, and these off seasons have been terrible, and, the players aren't getting their money, and the owners are colluding against the players, and all these things. So, this dispute was brewing for a long time, and it just came at the worst possible moment, because you feel like if those two sides had really been able to work together, you could have seen some maybe innovative changes to the game. Maybe we would be looking at, well, it's a 60-game schedule. Why don't we try and see what a pitch clock looks like, or other things like that? So that's my frustration as a baseball fan. We're ultimately going to get the sport. We're ultimately going to get a chance to try and launch this season. We'll see if they'll be able to finish it, given the national health crisis right now. But so we did get that, but how we got here was just bad, and it was horrible for the sport. And it's unfortunate, because this could have been an opportunity to be innovative with the game if the two sides had been willing to work together and to try to make changes to fix baseball, or to get baseball on the right path, to being the sport that we all grew up loving, and I don't think we love as much as we once did, because of how long it takes and all the problems that are plaguing the game. So that's my frustration with the labor dispute. It was an opportunity missed.
It absolutely was, Matt. And now we'll get into this Red Sox season. And I think on the air, on numerous occasions, you referred to the Red Sox starting rotation as abject ass.
Yes, that is correct. Abject ass.
And I have a hard time disagreeing with you. And now Eduardo Rodriguez, who was the, I'm going to put this in air quotes, ace of the staff, with Chris Sale injured and David Price obviously in Los Angeles with Mookie Betts. He's not going to be ready after he tested positive for COVID. Now, Nathan Eovaldi is your opening day starter. Is this the worst Red Sox rotation of your lifetime?
Yes, easily, not even close. I'm trying to think about, what would be worse. You go back to when I was a kid, maybe 97, with Steve Avery and Aaron Seeley and Wakefield and Jeff Suppan. Say what you will about that group, it wasn't good, but those were at least 4 big league pitchers. The Red Sox have like 1.5 big league pitchers in their starting rotation right now. Because I don't even want to count Martin Perez. I mean, technically, like, he is a big league pitcher, but he's one of the worst consistent starters in Major League Baseball, and that's like, he was supposed to be your fourth or fifth starter, now he's your second starter, and guarantee you, Cam, he will lead the Red Sox in innings pitched this year because Evaldi's going to get hurt. Rodriguez, Lord knows, I mean, obviously, the last year he's doing better, but he's not exactly the picture of durability. Like, how many mounds has this guy fallen off of and missed 10 starts? Like, I mean, if there's a mound, Eduardo Rodriguez has fallen off of it. It just always seems to be an issue. So, I mean, it's horrible. I mean, Ryan Weber, like, this guy, like, all due respect to him, I'm sure he's a great guy. Not a big league pitcher. You see the kid they just got from the Rays yesterday, who's like 6-29 with an ERA of like 7 in his career. It's like their quest to find literally the worst pitcher in baseball continues, and it's embarrassing. They've got a payroll approaching $200 million, and you have 1.5 big league starters, 2 when Rodriguez comes back. Like, how is that possible for the Boston Red Sox? I don't know. And, the scary thing is, Ken, not scary, I should say, but the crazy thing is, I think they're still going to compete because over 60 games, they're going to be able to hit enough to at least hide that staff a little bit. I think it rears its ugly head eventually, but they're going to compete in a year where they probably don't deserve to compete.
No, you're right. And you said this is the Boston Red Sox who went from, with the exception of, as you said, 1997 and 2015, the 5 Aces year by John Farrell. They've had, they went from Roger Clemens to Pedro Martinez to Josh Beckett to John Lester to David Price to Chris Sale. I mean, they always have had a legit guy you would view as a top 10 or at worst top 15 starter in the league leading their rotation since the 80s with Clemens. And now, I don't know if they have a top 50 starter. And I've never seen the Red Sox go into a season this ill-prepared with their staff. And to make matters worse, as we saw again last night, the bullpen ain't much better.
Yeah, no, it's when you look at this pitching staff and you're like, well, the bullpen is clearly better than the starting rotation, and that's saying something because here's the thing. Like, all right, so we talk about, you look at the bullpen pitchers that they're bringing back from last year, like Brandon Workman, who I've always liked more than just about everybody else. Like, if he had a bad year, would it surprise you? No. Nope. Matt Barnes is probably still their best bullpen arm, but he can't pitch on back-to-back days, and he's inconsistent. Marcus Walden, like, is he going to be this year's version of Ryan Brazier? It's like, oh yeah, this guy's all right, he's pretty good, and then he's down in Pawtucket, like, and then Ryan Brazier, this guy got was the darling of the 2018, just came out of nowhere bullpen, and was in Pawtucket, for parts of last year because it turns out that a guy who was pitching for the Hiroshima Carp in the Japanese League in 2017, turns out maybe he's not a very consistent big league pitcher, like shocker. And yet it's still better than their starting rotation. So it's embarrassing. And I think the hope is here, Cam, that Chaim Bloom coming from the Rays. How many times did the Rays find these scrap heap pitchers who they turned into when they come out of the bullpen for Tampa, and again, I host a podcast called Hardcore Baseball. I follow the game, and you'd watch a Rays game, you're like, who is this guy? And then you come out, and he's got like a whip of .95. He's got an ERA of like 2.4 over the course of like 65 appearances. You're like, I've literally never heard of this guy.
They're the new Cardinals, yeah.
Right, exactly, and they did that all the time, and you've seen Bloom trying to replicate that here with the Red Sox. I think it's pretty obvious. Like, how many of these 4A pitchers have they brought in since Bloom took over? I mean, I can't name them all. I mean, it's just he just keeps bringing these guys in and bringing them in. And you know what? They were successful in doing that in Tampa, like finding that guy who sucked and you make a tweak and then all of a sudden he's a good pitcher for you for a year and a half. Like the Red Sox have to hope that they can kind of recreate what the Rays have done in Tampa when it comes to just bringing in these journeyman 2 or 3 stop pitchers who you just think are 4A guys and then all of a sudden they turn into valuable bullpen pieces. Like they better hope that they can do that because if they can't, they're going to be in deep trouble.
Yes, they are. And as we speak, Vladdy Guerrero goes over the Green Monster for a 2-run shot off of Brian Johnson. How fitting.
Oh, yeah. Brian Johnson. No, he's great with his 83-mile-an-hour fastball. That's awesome. I feel great.
Oh, absolutely. But now the one strength of the team, Matt, is the lineup, which even without Mookie Betts remains tremendous with Bogarts, Devers, J.D. Martinez. But one thing you have brought up constantly on the radio, and I agree with you, is with Alex Cora gone, you worry about Ron Menike's ability to connect with Bogarts and Devers, because Cora clearly did that and got the best out of those two great players. We finally saw the Bogarts we all thought we were getting when he was a young prospect in the last couple of years. Devers turned into a legitimate, one of the best power hitters in the game, but now with Cora gone, you worry about Menike's ability to connect with them.
Yeah, sure. I mean, a little bit, absolutely. And I guess I worry a little less about Bogarts because he's an established player right now. He's a leader on this team. And listen, I was in Portland with Xander in 2013, and I think very highly of him as a person. And I think, he has really grown into that role. But, when he first came into the big leagues, he was just a 21-year-old kid from the island. The world was a little big for him. And I think that helped him in 13 because, he goes in, he has an impact on the World Series, and it's just like this kid doesn't know any better because it's just kind of like, all right, I guess I'm just playing baseball here. But you saw in 14 and 15 when he started to struggle, he couldn't connect with Farrell, and Farrell was an ass kicker, and that does not work with who Xander is as a person. He's a very quiet, mild manner, very thoughtful, very just overall good dude. And that John Farrell thing just didn't mix with his personality. But then Alex Cora comes in, and here's a guy who can speak the language. Bogart speaks like 5 languages. So he can speak any language. But it's Cora was able to connect with him and really help him develop into the player that the Red Sox thought they had. So, but I think, Bogarts is, let's be honest, he's an older player now. He's still in his late 20s, but, he's older, he's established, he's paid, he's, like all of those things. I'm not concerned about him. Like, Cora's gone, I'm sure he'll miss him and all that, but Renicky was there, he was the bench coach, that I'm sure Bogarts will be fine. Devers is the one I worry about, because Devers is younger, he's still more impressionable. There are questions about his fitness coming into camp. Like, Cora was able to connect with him on a level, and I feel like he's still at a point in his career where he needs that. He needs maybe that hand-holding, maybe that Xander Bogaerts doesn't need, and maybe he did need 2 or 3 years ago, but doesn't need now. So that's my concern with Devers. And Rodriguez, too. Because it seems like Corey, even at times, couldn't connect with Eddie Rodriguez or, get him motivated or what have you. Last year he certainly did, but, Cora, I remember ripping the guy in 2018. Early on in the playoffs. So, I worry about Rodriguez and Devers, and the problem is those are 3 of your probably 5 most important players, right?
Absolutely.
In 2020. So, that's a big question that needs to be answered.
So, Matt, you said it here, and we only got a couple minutes left to go, but you said it to start the show that they should be able to contend this year, given the 60-game schedule. If we all agree, if this was a 162-game season, if this was under normal circumstances, this team wouldn't sniff the playoffs. It just wouldn't have been able to hold up over the long term. But you're in a 60-game season. You're in the same division as the Orioles, who might be the worst team in baseball. And the Blue Jays, who probably aren't much better. They have some young stars in Bichette and Vlad Guerrero Jr. But at the same time, you get the Yankees and Rays,